Tonight at 10, the infighting at the top of BHS as the former owner is branded a liar. DOMINIC CHAPPELL, who owned the company when it collapsed, is accused by a financial consultant of being completely unsuited to the job.
He was a Premier League liar and a Sunday pub league retailer, at best.
Less than a week after the retailer said it was being wound up, putting thousands of jobs at risk, Mr. CHAPPELL expressed regret.
I am very upset that there are 11,000 people directly and a number of thousand people indirectly who now have lost their jobs. It is a travesty that that has happened.
We'll have more on the evidence presented to the Parliamentary Committee today. Also tonight, the deadline for registering to vote in the EU referendum is extended to tomorrow night after problems with the computer system. A special report from Iraq on the battle for Fallujah as Iraqi forces challenge Islamic State militants. Using DNA from 3 people to create a baby is safe, according to a major research study at Newcastle University. And David Beckham in Swaziland, visiting African children who are living with HIV.
Here, an 11-year-old with mental health issues is restrained in handcuffs and a spit hood while in the custody of Sussex police. And thousands of cyclists say one rail company's treating them unfairly.
Good evening. The full extent of the infighting among the leaders of BHS has been laid bare in a parliamentary committee hearing. Less than a week after the retailer said it was being wound up, putting thousands of jobs at risk, MPs have been questioning DOMINIC CHAPPELL, the man who bought the business from Sir Philip Green last year. One financial consultant described Mr. CHAPPELL as a Premier League liar. Our business editor Simon Jack has more details.
The post-mortem into BHS's rapid demise saw its most dramatic episode yet today. Key cast members of this retail drama arrived to face MPs. Michael Hitchcock, former BHS finance director. He was followed by BHS chief executive when the company collapsed, Darren Topp. And the usually elusive former bankrupt, former racing driver, former owner, DOMINIC CHAPPELL. It was soon clear why he's been keeping his head down.
He's a mythomaniac, Premier League liar, a Sunday pub league retailer. It just did not smell right. Yeah. And if it doesn't smell right, invariably it is not right. So,
of course, as we know now, things weren't right. Just over a year after it was bought for £1, it fell into administration in April, and after a saviour couldn't be found, the death knell was sounded just last week. 11,000 workers will pay the price for this failure.
I mean, it's a matter of public record.
BHS bosses were clear where the blame lies. Promised money never arrived, and what had been left started to disappear.
And it became clear towards the end that, you know, rather than putting money in, he, you know, literally got his money in the, he got his fingers in the till.
When he challenged a last-minute £1.5 million withdrawal, he got an extraordinary response.
I said to him, "That's theft." Now, if I take out all the expletives, he basically said, "Do not kick off about this, Darren. I've had enough of you telling me what to do over the last few months. It's my business. I can do what I want. And if you kick off about it, I'm going to come down there and kill you."
With the seat well and truly warmed up, DOMINIC CHAPPELL took his turn, and while he denied threatening to kill his own chief executive, he admitted to profiting from this doomed venture.
Is it fair to say that you've made a profit out of this?
Yes, it is. I have made a profit out of this, but I have also worked in the business continuously during the last 13 months. I also racked up considerable fees on the way through,
Do you feel you've earned this profit?
Yes, I do.
What do you think about the 11,000 people who were in danger of losing
Devastating.
their jobs?
He went further, saying a last-minute rescue bid by this man, Sports Direct owner Mike Ashley, was scuppered by Sir Philip.
There was a willing buyer and a willing seller for the business, and Mike was going to save the business. Philip found out about it, went absolutely insane. He was screaming and shouting down the phone that he didn't want to get involved with Mike Ashley, etc., and then served us the notice that tipped us over.
One former worker also blames Sir Philip for the company's fate.
Well, I still feel that the blame lies largely with Philip Green and his family, because they milked BHS as a cash cow until it was completely dry, and then they threw it away for £1 like an old shoe.
The stage is now set for Sir Philip Green to defend his own role in the biggest high street collapse since the financial crisis.
And Simon's with me now. We heard plenty of very strong words and phrases today. What did we learn?
It was amazing, and there were times when I was watching it saying, crikey, I can't believe what I'm hearing. But what emerged was there's a big blame game going on. The management blamed DOMINIC CHAPPELL, the owner. DOMINIC CHAPPELL said the management should have been minding their own business, looking after the retailing side, and then he trained his fire on Sir Philip Green, making two very serious allegations. One, that Sir Philip Green triggered the administration, and two, that he scuppered that last-minute deal with Mike Ashley. Now, I've spoken to sources close to Sir Philip Green, and he's going to deny both of those claims when he takes the hot seat next week. But the pantomime villain, if you like, in all of this is DOMINIC CHAPPELL. But questions need to be asked whether this villain, this creature, was in many ways one of Sir Philip Green's own creation. He financially supported, in some ways, DOMINIC CHAPPELL through this process, and if you like, gave him the firepower to do the deal to buy a business that he no longer wanted. So we'll hear more from Sir Philip Green next week, but at least one more episode of this extraordinary drama left to go here.
OK, Simon, thanks very much again. Simon Jack there for us. Now, ministers have decided to extend the deadline for people to register to vote in the EU referendum until tomorrow night. The original deadline was midnight last night, but thousands of people said they'd been unable to apply because of problems with the website. Extending the period will require legislation, as our deputy political editor John Pienaar explains.
Were you one of those who tried to register to vote online since last night? Chances are you failed. At over 500,000 clicks and counting, the official website crashed. Thousands were denied the right to join the EU referendum. So today, an emergency decision to grant more time. David Cameron, who believes the bigger the vote the better, brought the news.
Look, it's extremely welcome that so many people want to take part in this massive democratic exercise, in this vital decision for our country.
The new deadline would be midnight tomorrow. Gordon and Nikki from Worcestershire tried to register last night. He could, she couldn't. Were they happy now?
Very happy. and it's really great, I think, that the government have been flexible and responsive so quickly to make sure that people get the vote. And I hope a lot of people, young people, are also online at this very moment, because it's their future more than ours.
This vote will decide Britain's place in the world for decades, so no surprise more time's been given to voters to register. Tonight, the Remainers, who believe a big turnout at the polls will help their side look happiest. The race could be tight. Every vote will count, and that's why the campaigning has become so frantic, with the Leavers warning of mass migration if we stay inside the EU, and the stronger inside talking of a meltdown in the markets if we choose to leave. Now there are fresh warnings that if Britain chooses to leave the EU, many more Scots will want to leave Britain. No one's holding back. The Leavers say they'll support the decision to extend the time to register, but not all of them are happy about it.
Any idea of rewriting the rules in any substantial way would be complete madness and make this country look like an absolute shambles in the run-up to this referendum.
If they left it to the last minute and all tried to register yesterday, that's their fault, and that we should not change our regulations in the middle of a very important referendum campaign simply to suit those who haven't organised their personal affairs well enough to secure their registration in good time.
But thousands more will be able to vote. Will more young voters swing it for Remain, or more voters angry about EU meddling win it for the Leavers? There's not much cheer from either side so far. It's been more about competing visions of gloom. But on June the 23rd, just will decide once and for all how the country's run. And the skies are already darkening for the political fallout. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, George Osborne says the forthcoming referendum is a fight for the soul of the country. In a BBC interview with Andrew Neil this evening, the Chancellor rejected claims that he's trying to scare people into voting to remain in the EU. Our political editor, Laura Kuensberg, was listening to the exchanges.
Tonight in the studio live, the Chancellor, George Osborne.
The money man, the Tories' tactician, defending the decision to hold this referendum, defending the strength of his warnings about exit.
If we vote to leave,
then we lose control. We lose control of our economy. And if you lose control of your economy, you lose control of everything. And that's not a price worth paying.
The Chancellor said the use of forecasts...
Right, leave it up, because people need to know
Chancellor,
what is
I
at
will
stake.
leave it up.
not facts, was justified, trying to stick to the economic script.
You listen to everyone, and they're telling you that Britain will be poorer, the families in Britain will be poorer. And look, we can talk about any number of numbers. I'll tell you what they've all got in common. One big fat minus in front of each one of them. That's the consequence for the people watching this programme.
But Mr Osborne's worst nightmare is this becoming a vote just on immigration.
When pressed, the Leave campaigners have basically admitted their policy would see more immigration from outside the EU.
If all this immigration is so
people
good,
should be clear.
Look,
they might have concerns about immigration, but that is not on the ballot paper.
If you wanted to
our
talk,
membership of the European Union and
talk
all
about
the prosperity and our role in the world, that's on the ballot paper.
He tried to kill off the outers' claims that Turkey is on the way to joining the EU and millions of Turks could be on their way here.
Turkey is a key ally. They're a member of NATO, by the way, an organisation we all, on all sides of the campaign, talk up. But is it going to be a member of the European Union? No, it's not.
Never, ever? Not quite what he said.
The British government policy is it should not join the European Union today.
But the bigger clash, he believes, of ideas and of instinct.
I do not want Nigel Farage's vision of Britain. It is mean, it is divisive, it is not who we are as a country. Britain is a great country.
I understand
fighting
that.
for the soul of this country. And you know that.
But we're also fighting for truth.
Sadly, Nigel Farage and his vision of Britain has taken over the Leave campaign.
Vote Leave led not by Nigel Farage. Remember, it's run by his Tory colleagues. This is a campaign, though, for every political party. And much more importantly, it's a choice for every single one of us.
George Osborne was pretty defiant throughout, saying that he wasn't trying to scare people, but literally in the same breath saying there was a lot actually to be scared about. What I think we will hear more of in the coming days from his side is this claim that somehow the Leave campaign has been hijacked by what he described as Nigel Farage's mean and divisive message. Now, Nigel Farage, of course, isn't even part of the official Leave campaign. It's run by senior Conservatives and some people from the Labour Party too. But I think the Remain campaign have seized on this as a tactic they will try to employ in the next few days, in the fortnight just now left to go before the referendum vote itself. They clearly think that it might help their cause if they somehow tarnish the whole out campaign, saying it's just Nigel Farage's vision. But Mr Farage himself will be subject to the same kind of grilling in the same studio on Friday night.
OK, Laura, thanks very much. Laura Kunsberg there for us at Westminster. As Laura was saying there, the referendum taking place 2 weeks tomorrow. Some opinion polls are suggesting the result could be close, but after failing to predict the outcome of the last general election, should the pollsters be believed? Well, my colleague Christian Fraser is here to take a closer look.
Hugh, thank you. Well, let me take you back to the day before the general election last year. This was the last poll of polls we published here at the BBC. The Conservatives, as you can see, just 1 point ahead. Nowhere in this was there any clue from the pollsters of what would come next.
But here it is, 10 o'clock, and we are saying the Conservatives are the largest party.
The exit poll took everyone by surprise. David Cameron was on track for an absolute majority. A huge embarrassment for the polling agencies. It was quickly followed by an industry-wide investigation. There have been changes since, but in a referendum, the job is even harder. On Europe, we've not had a vote since 1975. There are no precedents. Attitudes change over 40 years, and a good many voters weren't even born.
Please, I'm trying to work. Would you mind going away?
Some attitudes don't change. But in spite of last year's experience, polling results are appearing again on the front pages as the voting day gets closer. Now, we don't have a poll of polls for this referendum, but I can show you one from the website of NatSen, Britain's biggest social research centre. The average of the 6 most recent polls puts Remain 2 points ahead on the 6th of June. The gap is narrowing, but it looks confused, doesn't it? And here's the problem close up. Let's take 2 of the polling agencies they've used who are conducting both online and telephone polling. This is ORB. They have Remain a long way in front by 14 points at the last poll on the 5th of June. And here is ICM in reverse. They have Leave out in front by 6 points on the same day. which is why the president of the Polling Council, John Curtice, urges caution.
The pollsters are faced with the task of estimating something that they've not previously had to estimate. In contrast, in a general election, they can always point to their past experience in order to try and ensure that their polls are as accurate as possible.
And that is the key thing here. This referendum is a singular, unique event. Nothing really to compare it to. No trends or patterns to follow. Who would be a pollster on this one? Hugh.
Christian, thanks very much again. Christian Fraser there for us. Now, 3 people have died in a shooting in the Israeli city of Tel Aviv. At least 10 others were injured. The attack happened at a popular restaurant shopping area near the Defence Ministry. Police say that 2 attackers, Palestinians they say, from the West Bank, have been arrested. Let's talk to our correspondent, Yolande Knell, who's in Jerusalem. Do you have more details of what happened, Yolande?
Well, this took place at Sarona Market. It's a busy evening hangout place with cafes and restaurants, shops where people like to go in Tel Aviv. Reports say that the 2 attackers were sitting in a cafe when they got up and opened fire. And there's video that you can see on social media that gives a real sense of the panic, with crowds rushing from the scene, tables and chairs overturned. Israeli police say that the 2 Palestinian men they've arrested are cousins who are in their 20s. They come from the village of Yatta in the West Bank, which is close to the city of Hebron. This has been a real flashpoint in the latest upsurge of violence that began towards the end of last year. Now, in the past few months, it had seen the number of attacks was dropping, so this is something that's really going to concern people. The Israeli Prime Minister moved quickly tonight to hold a meeting at the Defence Ministry just a few hundred metres from where this attack happened.
OK, Yolande, thanks very much for the update there in Jerusalem. Yolande now. Using DNA from 3 people to create a baby is safe, according to a major research study by scientists at the Wellcome Trust Centre at Newcastle University. They're trying to help women at risk of passing on serious genetic disorders to have a healthy child. Last year, the UK became the first country to approve laws to permit the procedure. Our medical correspondent, Fergus Walsh, has the story.
This is the IVF technique which could prevent life-threatening diseases being passed on. The nucleus of an egg and a sperm are being removed from an embryo with faulty mitochondria and being put into a healthy donor. A team at Newcastle University did studies on more than 500 donor eggs and now think they have the technique ready.
So we've examined many embryos now, and we're confident on the basis of our results that these embryos are indistinguishable from embryos created by normal IVF, and that they will give rise to healthy pregnancies.
Mitochondria are the power packs of our cells, but when faulty can cause a huge range of diseases in the muscles, heart and other organs. Within hours of IVF, the parent's key DNA that shapes our appearance and personality would be removed, leaving behind the faulty mitochondria. All the key genes would be placed into a donor embryo that's had its DNA removed and contains only healthy mitochondria. Any child born and future generations would have DNA from 3 people, although only 0.1% from the donor in the mitochondria.
It's affected her quite badly, really. It's affected her mobility. She had
Claire Exton's mum, Norma, died after her lungs and heart stopped working. Claire also carries the rare faulty DNA. It's caused hearing loss, and she wants the disorder to stop with her.
It makes me more determined to have a child without mitochondrial disease, without passing it down into the next generation, because of seeing my mum like she was.
The idea of creating babies with DNA from 3 people will make some uneasy, but Parliament overwhelmingly approved it last year because of the pressing medical need. If external experts support the study in the journal Nature, then the team at Newcastle will be able to apply for a licence to treat a handful of affected women each year. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
Up to 90,000 civilians could still be trapped in the Iraqi city of Fallujah, according to the United Nations humanitarian coordinator for Iraq. Iraqi security forces have been attacking Islamic State militants in the city, which lies just 40 miles from the capital, Baghdad. They've been doing that for more than 2 weeks. Our defence correspondent, Jonathan Beale, has been with Iraqi fighters on the outskirts of Fallujah.
The fight for Fallujah is far from over. But the Iraqi security forces are gaining ground. They've just taken this territory from so-called Islamic State in the past 24 hours. This is the new front line in the fight against Islamic State, and Fallujah is just a few kilometres that way. The commander says they've paused here for the moment to allow civilians to flee. From here they can see the enemy positions, and in the distance the city itself, still under IS control. But the commander says they won't be rushing into Fallujah.
We stopped to let families flee. If it wasn't for the civilians, we would have been inside Fallujah 3 days ago.
But the advance has already come at a price. These the areas recently liberated. No sign of civilian life, just devastation. Tens of thousands of people are still thought to be trapped in Fallujah. These, the ones who've managed to escape any way they can, swimming for their lives across the Euphrates, carrying children and a few belongings. And this is their new home, tent cities under the baking hot sun. Here, the family of Mohammed. She says their life in Fallujah under IS control was increasingly desperate. There is no food. We didn't eat properly for months. We just ate scraps, and after that, we ate the scraps of the scraps, because we had no choice. Mustafa managed to escape with her children, including 2 blind sons.
Islamic State blew up our water source to make an obstacle for the Iraqi army, and we were left without water, but they still wouldn't let us leave.
They are still waiting for their husbands. Men of fighting age have been separated for questioning about possible links to IS. And there have already been allegations they've suffered abuse at the hands of the Shia militia. They too are involved in this fight to liberate what is a Sunni city. And even if IS can be defeated, Iraq still has to overcome its deep sectarian divide. Jonathan Beale, BBC News, outside Fallujah.
Maria Sharapova, the former Wimbledon champion, says she will appeal against the 2-year ban which has been imposed by the International Tennis Federation after she failed a drugs test at this year's Australian Open. The 29-year-old said the ban was unfairly harsh. At the Old Bailey, a man who attacked travellers with a knife at an underground station in East London last December has been found guilty of attempted murder. Muhyiddin Mire, who's 30 and has a history of mental illness, stabbed one man in the throat and told police that he'd done it for what he called his Syrian brothers. Our correspondent Tom Simons followed the case.
Muhyiddin Mire, knife in hand. He's already attacked one man, a musician, a guitar on his back. Mire has cut his throat, but the man survives. The attacker then digs out his Oyster card and leaves. To confront other bystanders outside. A clue to his motivation?
If you live in Syria, they bomb you. It doesn't matter. Security!
He goes back into Leytonstone Station.
Go! Stay! Stay this man!
But these people don't run. They try to distract him, to contain him.
Stay, man!
They keep filming, the footage shown to the jury.
Go, go!
It takes police 3 attempts to bring him down with tasers. And a bystander shouts this.
You ain't no Muslim, bro!
Words reported around the world. During the attack here, Mire shouted, "This is for my Syrian brothers. I'm going to spill your blood." But despite the fact that he had collected extremist videos and pictures, he'd had no contact with any jihadists. And his family are convinced there was another reason for what happened here. He had a history of psychotic delusions. Police are increasingly worried that mentally ill people can become motivated by jihadist propaganda.
Terrorist organisations such as Daesh or IS over in Syria prey on individuals such as him. He had downloaded a vast amount of extremist material, which we think certainly inspired him to conduct an attack here.
Mira's sentencing has been delayed while a psychiatric report is produced. Tom Simons, BBC News, East London.
The Kingdom of Swaziland in southern Africa has the highest rate of HIV infection in the world, and a drought afflicting the whole region has put added pressure on resources that's affecting many vulnerable children. The former England captain, David Beckham, who set up his own charitable fund in conjunction with UNICEF, has been in Swaziland to see the situation and the work being done. And my colleague Rita Chakrabarti joined him.
Sikanyaso is an adult before his time. This teenager gathers the wood, cooks the meals and looks after his grandmother after losing both parents, one to AIDS. He himself is HIV positive. This is a nuclear family, Swazi style.
Because of parents, I will get the love. There is that pain, but I accept it in my life. But I do not have parents. Some others, some of my peers have parents.
An unreal suspension from the daily grind. Into Sikanyaso's team club comes David Beckham, global superstar and now almost full-time charity worker. The children at this teen support group give him a raucous welcome. All are HIV positive, the virus passed down from the mother to child, and all face a lifetime on drugs. Those drugs are freely available, but Swaziland remains known as the epicentre of HIV. Beckham says the challenge is to get young boys to understand that they must protect the girls they sleep with from this sexually transmitted disease.
Educating children, young boys, that could be your sister, that's your mum, it's your cousin. The protection that you need to prevent contracting HIV and AIDS, you need to wear a condom.
For many, the stigma of having HIV remains. We can't show the face of this girl. She has HIV, as does almost every member of her family, and she faces cruelty from some. She told me there are some people she feels really hurt by. Once she told them that she was HIV positive, and they started telling everybody, including some teachers, and that was upsetting. For children here in Swaziland living with HIV, there's now a new challenge, which is drought. Look at this, the crops have failed, and it's meant that people are going hungry. And if children are going hungry, it means that they don't want to take their drugs. And if they don't take their drugs, they're much more likely to develop full-blown AIDS. There is hope for the brand new generation. HIV-positive women are taking the right medication in pregnancy, and transmission rates to their babies have dropped dramatically. David Beckham is harnessing the power of celebrity to a cause that needs urgent funds. His appeal here is undoubted. The world's response, less certain. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News, Swaziland.
Well, it's been a very long wait for Wales football fans, 58 years to be exact, since the national team made it to the finals of a major tournament. But they're now just 3 days away from their opening game in Euro 2016 in France. Our correspondent Howell Griffith is with the team in the port of Dinard in Brittany.
Generations of Welshmen have wanted to make this journey. Now, with their talisman Gareth Bale, Wales are finally flying the flag at a major football tournament. Having the world's most expensive player on your side helps, but the manager wants the team to remember all the other greats who never made it this far.
Ryan Giggs and Mark Hughes, Dean Saunders, Ian Rush, unbelievable team that, not bad. This team, they've gone one more step, one step further. and they have proved that they are the golden generation. So, but now we're here and we have to do a little bit more.
The last time Wales played in a major tournament was in the 1958 World Cup, when they made it through to the quarter-finals here at the Ullevi Stadium in Gothenburg, Sweden. They came up against Brazil and a young striker who was about to announce himself to the footballing world.
Scored cheekily by Pelé.
It's remembered by Welsh fans as the year Pelé broke our hearts. It was his first ever World Cup goal and enough to send Wales home. Cliff Jones was in the team of 58. He remembers returning to find few people knew Wales had been in a World Cup. But things will be very different this time, especially as Wales face England next week.
It's the biggest game Wales has ever played since we were in the World Cup last. That is one of the biggest games they were playing, and I'll be there.
As the only home nation with a team song, Welsh fans will make themselves heard in France. And seen too, Tim Williams is responsible for the hats many fans wear. The first game will be a moment no one wants to miss.
Probably say in Bordeaux with up to 20,000, which will be a fantastic sight, like, you know, because I've been to some Wales away games and we've had 67 supporters. So for me, it's fantastic to see.
Wales start Euro 2016 as underdogs, but this is a team that wants to write its own history. Hywel Griffith, BBC News, Dinard.
And we are looking forward to it. That's it from me here on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.